Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back to a time and place that feels both familiar and deeply strange. 18th century Paris. It's a world of powdered wigs, gilded carriages, and simmering revolution. But more importantly, for our sleepy story, it's a world utterly terrified of a humble vegetable. That's right, we're going to explore the quiet, absurd, and surprisingly charming crusade to convince the French that the potato was not, in fact, an evil, lumpy monster sent to destroy them. It's a story about marketing, psychology, and the power of a good meal. And let's be honest, given the diet of the time, you probably wouldn't survive this era without a bit of help. The sheer amount of bread and the profound lack of French fries would be a genuine shock to the system. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your quiet support makes all the difference. And in the comments, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always a quiet thrill to see this little corner of the internet stretch across so many time zones. Asterisk now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Asterisk, the sound of your world begins to fade. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, the digital glow of your screen. It all recedes, replaced by something older, something softer. The first thing you notice is the ground beneath your feet. It isn't flat. It's a mosaic of uneven cobblestones, slick with a fine evening mist that seems to rise from the very bones of the city. You feel the slight give in the leather soles of your simple shoes, a sensation entirely different from the solid, predictable pavement of your own time. Asterisk, you are standing on a narrow street in Paris, sometime around the 1770s. The day has bled into a cool, dusky twilight, and the city is painted in shades of gray, charcoal, and a deep, velvety blue. There are no streetlights, as you know them. Instead, the gloom is punctuated by the occasional flicker of an oil lantern hanging from an iron bracket on a stone wall. Its light is a warm, buttery yellow, casting long, dancing shadows that make the alleyways seem alive, breathing softly in the encroaching night. The light doesn't illuminate so much as it suggests, leaving most of the world to your imagination. Asterisk, you draw a breath, and the air itself tells a story. It's thick with the smell of wood smoke from 1,000 chimneys, a scent that is cozy and ancient. Beneath that is the damp, earthy smell of the river Seine, and the faint, sweet aroma of baking bread from a nearby boulangerie, a smell that is the undisputed king of this city's perfumes. But there are other notes in this complex olfactory chord, ones your modern nose is unaccustomed to. The sharp tang of horse manure, a constant presence, and a certain pervasive, musty dampness that clings to the old stone buildings. It's not unpleasant, just dense. It's the smell of a city that is entirely organic, a living, breathing creature. Asterisk, you begin to walk. Your footsteps a soft clap on the wet stones. You pass beneath tall, narrow houses, their windows dark squares against the sky. From an open window above, you hear the faint notes of a harpsichord, a delicate, tinkling melody that drifts down and then disappears, swallowed by the quiet hum of the street. A carriage rattles by, pulled by two powerful horses, their hooves striking sparks from the cobbles. For a moment, you're caught in the glow of its polished lanterns, and you catch a glimpse inside, a flash of powdered white hair, the glint of a jewel, the rich sheen of a silk gown. Then it's gone, its rumble fading down the lane, leaving you in the quiet dimness once more. Asterisk, you find yourself drawn toward that scent of baking bread. It's the gravitational center of every neighborhood, the anchor of daily life. The bakery is a humble affair, its windows glowing with a warm, inviting light. Inside, you can see the baker, a man dusted in flour like a friendly ghost, pulling long dark loaves from a massive brick oven. This isn't the light, airy baguette you might imagine. This is the bread of the 18th century. The loaves are heavy, dense, with a thick, almost black crust. This is the fuel of Paris. For the wealthy, it's an accompaniment to lavish meals of roasted meats and delicate sauces. For the vast majority, this bread is the meal. Asterisk, and this reliance on bread is a fragile, dangerous thing. It's a historical fact that the average French person at this time ate 2 to 3 pounds of bread a day. Their entire well-being was tied to the price and availability of flour. When harvests failed, the city starved, and they failed often. Asterisk, as you stand there, watching the baker slide another magnificent loaf onto a cooling rack, you survey the other meager offerings available in the shop next door. You see baskets of turnips, their pale flesh, looking weary and uninspired. There are onions, of course, and bunches of hardy greens. Perhaps a few parsnips, looking like the turnip's slightly more interesting cousin. It's a bland, earthy palate, a diet defined more by what it lacks than what it contains. There is nothing here that speaks of vibrant flavor or surprising texture. It's sustenance, plain and simple. Historians still wonder about the psychology of tastes back then, whether the limited options created a palate that was incredibly sensitive to subtle flavors, or if it simply fostered a deep-seated suspicion of anything truly new. Asterisk, what you don't see, what you can't find anywhere in this city, is a potato. Not a single one. It doesn't exist in the stews, isn't sold on the street corners, and certainly isn't gracing the tables of the elite. The lumpy, unassuming tuber that you know as a staple of nearly every cuisine is, in this world, an object of folklore and fear. A lesser-known detail of the era is the sheer creativity of the rumors surrounding it. It was believed to cause leprosy. It was said to be poisonous, to sterilize the soil it grew in. It was a food for convicts and livestock, not for respectable people. It was an unholy thing, a root that grew downwards into the dark earth. Unlike noble wheat, which reached for the heavens. Asterisk, you are in a world on the cusp of a culinary revolution, but it doesn't know it yet. You are standing in the quiet before the storm, in a city that is hungry, suspicious, and completely unaware that its salvation might just be a humble, misunderstood vegetable from a faraway land. As the church bells begin to chime the hour, their deep, resonant tones washing over the rooftops, you can feel the deep, rhythmic pulse of the city. A city that runs on bread, gossip, and a healthy dose of superstition. And somewhere, in a quiet study, not far from here, a man is contemplating this very problem, sketching out a plan that is equal parts botany, showmanship, and gentle deception. You leave the warm glow of the bakery behind, the scent of bread slowly fading as you meander deeper into the labyrinth of quiet streets. The air grows cooler. You find yourself in a small, sparsely lit market square, now mostly deserted as the last vendors pack up their wares for the night. A woman is sweeping wilted cabbage leaves into a pile with a birch twig broom, the scratching sound rhythmic and soothing. It's here, in the quiet aftermath of the day's commerce, that you can truly feel the pulse of the city's anxieties. The talk isn't of politics or philosophy, but of the price of flour, the quality of the firewood, the eternal, pressing question of what will be for dinner tomorrow. Asterisk, you lean against a cold stone wall, observing a man haggling with a farmer over a small sack of something. It's not a transaction you recognize. The farmer, a man with a face weathered like old leather, gestures to the sack with a shrug. The city dweller, thin and wary, peers inside, and then recoils slightly, shaking his head. You drift closer, your curiosity piqued. The farmer sighs and mutters something about them being good enough for the pigs, at least. And as he ties the sack shut, you catch a glimpse of what's inside. A few dull, earth-caked, misshapen lumps. They are, of course, potatoes. But to the man who just refused them, they are something else entirely. They are a risk, an unknown, an object of deep and profound suspicion. To understand his reaction, you have to understand the stories that cling to this strange tuber, like the dirt on its skin. The potato was an immigrant in this world, a transplant from the mountains of Peru, and like many newcomers, it is met with a formidable wall of mistrust, the most terrifying whisper, the one that truly poisons the well of public opinion, is the belief that the potato causes leprosy. It sounds absurd to your modern ears, but in this time, it was a deeply held and widely accepted historical fact. The fear was rooted in a kind of folk logic. Leprosy, a dreaded and incurable disease, caused lumpy lesions and disfigurement of the skin. The potato was lumpy and misshapen. Therefore, in the beautifully simple, if profoundly incorrect, medical thinking of the day, eating the lumpy vegetable must cause the lumpy disease. You can almost picture the village doctor stroking his chin thoughtfully and declaring, "It seems obvious." No. This fear wasn't just a vague notion, it was codified. For a time, the French Parliament in Besançon actually banned the cultivation of potatoes, citing them as a dangerous substance. Imagine a government outlawing a vegetable. It's the kind of overreaction you'd expect from a toddler who has just tried broccoli for the first time. Not the official policy of a major European nation, but the fear was real. People looked at the potato's strange, uneven surface, its deep-set eyes, and saw not a source of nourishment, but a symptom, a grotesque premonition of disease, pulled from the ground. And then there was the question of its soul, or lack thereof. The potato grows in a way that felt deeply unnatural to the 18th century mind. Noble crops, like wheat and corn, grow upwards, reaching for the sun, for the heavens, for God. They are righteous and visible. The potato, however, is a subterranean creature. It hides. It develops in the darkness, in the cold, unholy earth. It's not even mentioned in the Bible, a fact that was taken far more seriously than you might imagine. In an era when faith governed every aspect of life, a food with no biblical precedent was immediately suspect. It was a goblin of a vegetable, a root of dubious character. Even the educated had their reasons for suspicion, and this is a lesser-known, slightly more scientific detail that bolstered the public's fear. Botanists of the day knew that the potato belonged to the nightshade family, Solanaceae. This made it a close cousin to some genuinely sinister plants, like the hallucinogenic mandrake and the notoriously poisonous belladonna, or deadly nightshade. Imagine trying to market a new fruit by telling people, "It's delicious," and it's only 2 cousins removed from cyanide. The potato was judged by its sketchy family tree, and it didn't help that the leaves and stems of the plant are, in fact, toxic. Early attempts at eating the potato sometimes involved people mistakenly cooking the greens instead of the tuber, leading to predictable and unpleasant results that only confirmed everyone's worst fears. Historians still debate the true root of this vegetable villainization. Was it genuine, widespread medical panic and religious superstition, or was it something simpler, a case of cultural and culinary snobbery? The potato, you see, had already found a foothold in other parts of Europe, but not in a way that inspired confidence. In Ireland, it was becoming the food of the desperately poor. In Germany, it was primarily used as livestock feed. So, for a refined Parisian, the potato wasn't just a strange, lumpy, potentially disease-ridden, unholy root from a poisonous family. It was also, and perhaps most damningly, food for pigs and peasants. The thought of putting something on your plate that was usually reserved for a hog in Prussia was, to put it mildly, an affront to one's dignity. So, as you watch the farmer hoist his rejected sack of potatoes onto his cart, you realize the scale of the challenge. This isn't just about introducing a new food. It's about overcoming a complex web of fear, folklore, science, and snobbery. The potato needs more than a good recipe. It needs a miracle of public relations. It needs someone who can look at this lumpy, dirt-caked pariah, and see not a monster, but a misunderstood hero. And as the farmer's cart creaks away into the twilight, you feel a subtle shift in the city's story, a sense that just such a person is waiting in the wings, ready to begin his quiet, gentle, and utterly revolutionary work. Leaving the marketplace and its lingering suspicions behind, you turn down a quieter, more residential street. The architecture here is a little grander, the doorways framed with carved stone. The warm glow from the windows feels softer, filtered through delicate laced curtains. It's on a street like this, away from the clamor of commerce and the desperation of the hungry, that our story's unlikely hero lives and works. You stop before a handsome, respectable building, its brass door knocker polished to a gentle gleam. A small, discreet plaque next to the door reads, Antoine Augustin Parmentier, Pharmacien, Major des Armies, Udon Tinoch. Instead, you let your awareness drift through the stone walls, past the entryway, and up a gracefully curved staircase. You find him in his study on the second floor. The room is a sanctuary of order and quiet intellect. Bookshelves line the walls from floor to ceiling, filled with leather-bound volumes, not just on medicine and chemistry, but on botany, agriculture, and philosophy. The air smells of old paper, beeswax polish, and the faint, clean scent of medicinal herbs. A fire crackles softly in the hearth, its flames dancing and casting a warm, flickering light across the room. And there he is, Antoine Augustin Parmentier. He is not a revolutionary firebrand or a bewigged aristocrat. He is a man in his late 30s, with a kind, intelligent face and a calm, thoughtful demeanor. He's dressed simply, his attention entirely focused on the papers spread across his large oak desk. He is, by trade, an army pharmacist, a man of science and precision. His job is to heal, to find solutions, to bring order to the chaos of injury and disease. And it is this very profession that has led him to his quiet, all-consuming obsession with the humble potato. His connection to the tuber isn't academic. It's deeply personal. And here we come to a widely accepted historical fact that is the key to his entire motivation. During the 7 Years' War, Parmentier was captured and served as a French prisoner of war in Prussia. 4 years, his diet in the prison camp consisted of almost nothing but potatoes. It was the food of his captors, the sustenance of the lowest ranks. He ate them day after day, expecting, like any good Frenchman, to keel over from leprosy or some other foul ailment. He waited for the lumps to appear, for his health to fail, but it never did. Instead, he found himself surprisingly healthy, strong, even, while others around him suffered from scurvy and malnutrition on meager rations. Parmentier and his fellow prisoners, sustained by the despised tuber, remained remarkably well. It was a profound, life-altering revelation. He had entered the prison camp, armed with all the prejudices of his homeland, and he emerged a convert, a true believer. He had seen firsthand that this reviled vegetable was not a poison, but a savior. It was nutritious, it was versatile, and it grew in abundance where precious wheat would fail. He hadn't just survived on potatoes. He had, in a very real sense, been saved by them. This experience planted a seed in his mind that would grow into a lifelong mission. He returned to France, not just as a pharmacist, but as an evangelist, an apostle for the potato. He saw the famines that periodically ravaged his country, the bread riots that destabilized the government, the pervasive hunger that was the background radiation of life for so many. And he knew, with the certainty of a man who had lived the proof, that he held the answer. But how to convince a nation so deeply entrenched in its culinary and cultural biases? He couldn't simply publish a scientific paper. That would be read by a few of his colleagues and ignored by everyone else. He couldn't lecture the poor on nutrition. They would trust their folklore over his facts. No, the problem wasn't scientific. It was psychological. It was a problem of marketing, Asterisk, and this is where we see the quiet brilliance of Parmentier's mind at work. As you watch him in his study, you see him not mixing potions or grinding herbs, but writing. He's sketching out a plan, a multi-pronged campaign of gentle persuasion. He understood a lesser-known but crucial detail about his society. In 18th century France, influence didn't trickle up. It cascaded down. To convince the peasant, you first had to convince the prince. Fads, fashions, and new ideas were not born in the fields or the factories. They were born in the gilded salons and opulent courts of Versailles. If he could make the potato fashionable, if he could make it an object of desire for the aristocracy, its acceptance among the common people would follow, as a matter of course. It was a strategy that was as cynical as it was brilliant. Asterisk historians still wonder how much of Parmentier's motivation was pure altruism and how much was personal ambition. Was he solely a humanitarian, driven by the memory of his own survival and a desire to end famine? Or did he also see this as his path to fame and influence, a way to make his name known in the highest circles of French society? The truth, as it so often is likely a complex mixture of both. He was a man of science, but also a man of his time, and he understood that to do good, one often needed to be well connected. Asterisk, as you observe him, he pauses his writing, leaning back in his chair. He picks up something from his desk. It's a small, lumpy, unimpressive-looking potato. He holds it in his palm, turning it over and over, his expression one of fond contemplation. He doesn't see a suspicious route. He sees potential. He sees loaves of potato bread, hearty stews, a nation no longer held hostage by the price of wheat. He sees the future, and in his quiet, orderly, scientific mind, a wonderfully unscientific, theatrical, and slightly mischievous plan is beginning to take shape. The first step would not involve a kitchen, a farm, or a marketplace. It would involve the most powerful and influential people in the kingdom, the king and queen of France. The soft, crackling fire in Parmentier's study seems to burn a little brighter as his audacious plan solidifies. You can almost feel the shift in the room's atmosphere, from quiet contemplation to a gentle, determined energy. His strategy is one of pure, refined showmanship, and its first act will be set on the grandest stage in all of France, the royal court at Versailles. You sense his thoughts turning from the abstract to the practical, to the intricate dance of etiquette and influence that defined courtly life. He knew he couldn't simply request a meeting to discuss a vegetable. That would be laughable. He needed an angle, a hook, something that would appeal not to the royal intellect, but to the royal love of novelty and beauty. Your perspective shifts, drifting out from the cozy confines of his study and across the miles that separate Paris from the sprawling, magnificent estate of Versailles. The journey is a gentle glide over moonlit fields and sleeping villages. You arrive at the palace, a place that is less a building and more a universe unto itself. Even at night, it hums with a silent, formidable power. Moonlight glints off 1,000 windows and illuminates the vast, geometric precision of the gardens. This is the sun from which all of French society drew its light and warmth. Parmentier knew, as a widely accepted historical fact, that King Louis XVI had a genuine interest in science and agriculture. The king was not just a figurehead. He was a man with hobbies, and one of them was a fascination with botany and new farming techniques. He had his own experimental gardens at Versailles, a place where he could escape the rigid formality of court life and indulge his curiosity. This was Parmentier's way in. He wouldn't present the potato as a solution to famine or a source of nutrition. That was far too grim and serious for the court. Instead, he would present it as a botanical curiosity, a charming novelty for the king's collection. The second part of his plan was aimed at the true center of French style and culture. Queen Marie Antoinette. While the king might be swayed by science, the queen, and by extension the entire court, was moved by fashion. Her taste dictated what was worn, what was said, what was eaten. If Marie Antoinette declared something to be fashionable, it became so, instantly and without question. Parmentier, the humble pharmacist, understood this dynamic perfectly. He needed to capture her imagination. So, how do you make a lumpy, brown potato, appealing to a queen, renowned for her love of all things beautiful, delicate, and extravagant? You don't show her the potato. You show her the flower. This was the stroke of gentle genius at the heart of Parmentier's plan. The potato plant, for all its unglamorous underground activity, produces a surprisingly lovely flower. It's a delicate five-petaled blossom that blooms in shades of white, lavender, and pale purple, with a bright yellow center. It's understated, yes, but it has a simple, rustic charm. It was the perfect Trojan horse for his mission. You can almost see the scene as he rehearsed it in his mind. He would secure a small audience with the king and queen, perhaps during one of their strolls through the gardens. He would not arrive with a sack of dirty tubers. He would arrive with a bouquet, a simple, yet elegant bouquet of potato blossoms. He would present it to the queen not as a food, but as a rare and exotic floral specimen. He would explain its origins in the New World, imbuing it with a sense of adventure and distant lands. He would speak of its simple beauty, its rustic elegance. He would frame it as a flower fit for a queen who appreciated the more natural style of beauty that was just beginning to come into vogue. It was a brilliant psychological pivot. He was shifting the conversation entirely. He wasn't saying, "Your Majesty, please consider this solution to our nation's crippling grain shortages." He was saying, "Your Majesty, what a charming little flower I've discovered. Perhaps it would look lovely pinned in your hair." He was bypassing reason and appealing directly to aesthetics and vanity. Historians still debate whether Parmentier fully anticipated the chain reaction this simple gesture would set off, or if he was simply hoping for the best. Did he know with certainty that the queen's adoption of the flower would ignite a trend across the entire court? Or was he just a hopeful amateur psychologist, throwing a beautifully crafted dart in the dark? Whatever his level of certainty, the plan was meticulously crafted. It was a lesser-known but critical detail that he timed his approach carefully, waiting for the potato plants to be in perfect, delicate bloom, ensuring his bouquet would be at its most charming. As you linger in the moonlit gardens of Versailles, you can feel the weight of this gamble. Everything rested on this first, delicate interaction. If the king dismissed him as a crank, or if the queen found the blossoms plain and uninteresting, his entire crusade could be over before it even began. The future of the potato in France, and the health of the nation, rested not on nutritional charts or agricultural reports, but on the perceived beauty of a simple, five-petaled flower and the whims of a young queen. The fate of millions was tied to a question of fashion. It was a plan that was at once profoundly silly and deadly serious, a perfect reflection of the strange, glittering, and deeply irrational world of the French court. The air in the gardens of Versailles is different from the air in Paris. It's cleaner, crisper, scented not with wood smoke and industry, but with damp earth, clipped boxwood hedges, and the faint, sweet perfume of 1,000 blooming flowers. You find yourself drifting through these immaculate grounds, a silent observer in a world of geometric perfection. The pathways are raked gravel, crunching softly under the imagined feet of courtiers. Fountains stand silent in the moonlight, their stone gods and goddesses gleaming with a soft, pale light. It is a world designed to project an image of absolute control over nature, a landscape as mannered and precise as the courtly etiquette that governs the lives of those within it. Asterisk it is, into this highly artificial world, that Parmentier plans to introduce his humble, rustic offering. Your perspective follows him now. On the day he has finally secured his brief audience with the king and queen, it is a fine spring morning, and the royal couple is taking their customary stroll through the Trianon Gardens, a slightly more natural and less formal corner of the vast estate. Parmentier is waiting for them, and you can feel a quiet thrum of nervous energy beneath his calm, professional exterior. He's not a courtier. He's a scientist. He is a man accustomed to facts and figures, not flattery and fashion. Yet here he is, about to perform a piece of carefully calibrated social theater. Asterisk in his hand. He holds not a scientific treatise, but a simple bouquet. You look closely at the flowers. They are exactly as he had envisioned. Delicate star-shaped blossoms of a soft, lavender-white hue, their yellow centers like tiny suns. They are tied with a simple ribbon. There is nothing overtly spectacular about them. Their charm lies in their simplicity, their quiet, unassuming beauty. They are a stark contrast to the flamboyant roses and exotic orchids typically favored by the court. They are, in a word, humble, and that is the very heart of their appeal. Asterisk King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette approach, accompanied by a small retinue of ladies-in-waiting and court officials. The king, a man more comfortable in his workshop than on his throne, has a slightly distracted, scholarly air about him. Marie Antoinette is the picture of elegance, her impossibly elaborate hairstyle a masterpiece of powdered artistry. She is the center of this small universe, and all eyes are on her. Asterisk, Parmentier bows low, his heart likely beating a steady, determined rhythm against his ribs. He presents his bouquet. This is the moment. A widely accepted historical fact records this encounter as the pivotal turning point in the potato's public relations campaign. Parmentier, with his pharmacist's knack for careful explanation, introduces the flower. He doesn't call it a potato blossom initially. He presents it as the flower of a fascinating plant from the New World, a botanical marvel with a remarkable story. He speaks of its hardiness, its ability to thrive in poor soil, subtly hinting at its practical virtues without belaboring the point. Asterisk the king, his interest piqued by the scientific angle, takes a blossom and examines it with genuine curiosity. He asks a few questions about its cultivation, its botanical family. Parmentier answers calmly and precisely, his expertise lending him an air of quiet authority. He has captured the king's intellect, but that was the easy part. The real test is the queen. Asterisk Marie Antoinette looks at the bouquet, and for a moment, the fate of the potato hangs in the balance. Historians can only speculate on what she truly thought, but her actions speak for themselves. Perhaps she was charmed by the flower's simplicity. Perhaps she was intrigued by the story of its exotic origins. Or perhaps she simply saw an opportunity to start a new trend, to introduce a fashion that was uniquely her own. She takes a single potato blossom from the bouquet and, with a smile, pins it in her hair. Amidst the powdered curls and silk ribbons, asterisk, it is a small gesture. It takes but a moment, but its impact is instantaneous and seismic. The queen has declared the potato blossom to be fashionable, asterisk, in that very instant. A lesser-known but wonderful detail of courtly life kicks in, the power of imitation. One of the ladies-in-waiting, ever watchful of the queen's tastes, immediately remarks on how charming the flower is. Then another. Soon, the entire court is abuzz. Where did this flower come from? What is it called? It is so simple, so rustic, so new. By the end of the day, every fashionable woman at Versailles is desperate to adorn herself with a potato blossom. The king, not to be outdone, plucks a flower from the bouquet and places it in his own buttonhole. A gesture of solidarity and approval. Asterisk, Parmentier has done it. He has transformed the symbol of his humble tuber from a sign of poverty and suspicion into the height of aristocratic fashion. He has made the potato chic. He hasn't mentioned hunger. He hasn't mentioned nutrition. He hasn't even, really, mentioned the potato itself. He has simply introduced its most beautiful aspect into the most influential circle in the kingdom, and allowed human nature to do the rest. Asterisk. As the royal couple continues their stroll, now proudly displaying their new floral accessories. Parmentier is left behind, a small, satisfied smile likely gracing his lips. He has not won the war, but he has won the crucial first battle. The seeds of acceptance have been sown, not in a farmer's field, but in the most fertile ground of all, the fickle, trend-obsessed, and fantastically influential world of the royal court. The potato is no longer just a root. It is now an accessory, and that, in 18th century France, was a promotion of the highest order. The success at Versailles was a heady, intoxicating triumph, but Parmentier, ever the strategist, knew that a fashion fad was as fleeting as the lifespan of the blossom that started it. He needed to translate this newfound aristocratic curiosity into something more tangible, more widespread. The court might be wearing the flower, but they were not yet eating the root. His next move would be even more ambitious. A piece of public theater that would take place not in the gilded halls of a palace, but on a dusty, worthless patch of land on the outskirts of Paris. Your perspective drifts away from the manicured lawns of Versailles and back toward the city. You find yourself hovering over a place called Les Sables, a sandy, barren plain to the west of Paris. It was, by all accounts, terrible farmland. The soil was poor, sandy, and considered utterly unsuitable for growing the delicate and demanding wheat crop that sustained the nation. It was a patch of land that everyone knew was useless, and that's precisely why Parmentier chose it. He had petitioned the king for a plot of land to conduct his agricultural experiments, and with his newfound royal favor, the request was granted. A lesser-known detail is the sheer audacity of what he was given. About 50 acres of this notoriously infertile ground. To any other farmer, it would have been an insult. To Parmentier, it was the perfect stage. He knew that if he could make potatoes grow here, in soil where nothing of value was thought to thrive, he would prove one of his most crucial points, that the potato was not a competitor to wheat, but a complement to it. It was a security measure. A crop that could be cultivated on the marginal lands that were otherwise left fallow. You watch as the experiment begins. Under Parmentier's careful direction, the field is plowed. The work is hard, the sandy soil resisting the iron plows pulled by weary-looking oxen. Local farmers likely watched these proceedings with a mixture of pity and scorn. They saw this city pharmacist, this man of books and potions, trying to coax life from a plot of land they had long ago written off as a lost cause. You can almost hear their cynical muttering. The king's new favorite is trying to grow rocks. What a fool. Day after day, the work continues. Trenches are dug, and the seed potatoes, the humble descendants of those that had sustained him in Prussia, are carefully planted. There is a quiet, rhythmic quality to the labor, the creak of the cart, the calls of the men, the soft thud of the tubers being dropped into the earth. It is a scene of faith and patience. Parmentier is there often, overseeing the process, his calm presence a stark contrast to the skepticism that surrounds him. He is not just planting a crop. He is planting an idea that this despised, misunderstood vegetable could be the key to France's future. As the weeks pass, a small miracle begins to occur at Les Sables. Green shoots emerge from the sandy soil. Tentative at first, then with a surprising vigor, the potato plants begin to grow. They seem to relish the conditions that would have starved a wheat crop. Their leaves unfurl, a vibrant, healthy green against the pale, dusty earth. They are hardy, resilient, and determined. Soon, the entire 50-acre plot is a sea of lush green foliage. The local farmers who had scoffed now stop and stare, a flicker of grudging respect in their eyes. The fool was not growing rocks, after all. He was growing a forest. Then, the flowers come. The field erupts in a riot of delicate white and lavender blossoms. The very same flowers that were now the height of fashion at Versailles. This was no accident. Parmentier had turned his worthless field into the largest and most impressive bouquet in all of France. People began to make excursions from the city, not just to see the strange agricultural experiment, but to see the fashionable flowers in their natural habitat. It became a destination, a curiosity. Parmentier would walk among his plants, explaining their virtues to anyone who would listen. He spoke of their nutritional value, their incredible yield, their resilience in the face of drought. But all this was just the setup. The real performance, the masterpiece of psychological manipulation, was yet to come. The growing crop was one thing, but the harvest was what mattered. He had to make people not just admire the potato, but desire it. He had to make them want to possess it, to taste it, to make it their own. Historians still debate the extent to which Parmentier's next moves were premeditated. Was the entire plan, from the flowers at court to the guards at the field, a single, brilliantly conceived strategy from the outset? Or did he improvise, adapting his tactics as he went along? It's hard to say for certain, but as you look down at this thriving, impossible field of green, you can feel the pieces of a grand puzzle clicking into place. He had captured the attention of the elite with the flower. He had demonstrated the potato's agricultural viability with his thriving crop on worthless land. Now, he had to create a sense of value, a sense of scarcity. He had to make this common, easy-to-grow tuber seem like a rare and precious treasure. And to do that, he was about to hire some very conspicuous security. Asterisk, the lush green field at Les Sablons, swaying gently in the summer breeze, has become a local landmark. The initial skepticism of the Parisian public has softened into a kind of gentle curiosity. Carriages from the city now make it a point to pass by the field, their occupants marveling at the sea of flowers and the sheer improbability of it all. Parmentier has successfully created a spectacle, but a spectacle is not sustenance. He knows that the real value of the potato is hidden underground, and to unlock it, he needs to engage in his most audacious act of reverse psychology yet. One morning, the people living near the field, and the travelers passing by, notice something new, something official, and slightly intimidating. Stationed around the perimeter of the 50-acre plot are armed guards. Not just a couple of watchmen, but uniformed, professional soldiers, likely from the Royal Guard. They stand at attention at regular intervals, their muskets gleaming in the sun, their expressions stern and unapproachable. They march their patrols with a serious, purposeful air. The message is unspoken but crystal clear. Whatever is growing in this field is incredibly important. So important, in fact, that it requires the protection of the king's own men. This, of course, is a widely accepted historical fact, and the cornerstone of Parmentier's legend. It was a stroke of theatrical genius. He had taken a crop that was considered worthless, and surrounded it with all the symbolic trappings of immense value. The human mind is a funny, associative thing. If you see something locked in a vault, you assume it's priceless. If you see something guarded by soldiers, you assume it's a treasure. Parmentier was banking on this simple, almost childish, piece of logic. You drift among the locals who have gathered at a safe distance to watch this new development. You can hear their hushed, speculative conversations. What are they guarding? One woman asks, shielding her eyes from the sun. It's just those strange plants the pharmacist is growing. An old man, leaning on a walking stick, shakes his head. The king would not waste his soldiers on a common vegetable, he says, his voice filled with newfound authority. There must be more to it. It must be a royal crop. Something reserved only for the tables at Versailles. And just like that, the narrative begins to shift. The potato is no longer just a botanical curiosity. It's a royal treasure, a restricted delicacy. The presence of the guards transforms it from something people were afraid to eat into something they were forbidden to eat. And, as anyone who has ever told a child not to touch something knows, prohibition is the most powerful form of marketing there is. The desire for the potatoes begins to grow. rooted not in an appreciation for their nutritional value, but in the simple, powerful human instinct to want what one cannot have. Parmentier himself is a picture of calm authority during this phase. He might be seen visiting the field, conferring with the captain of the guard, inspecting his precious crop with a serious air. He is playing his part to perfection. He is no longer just a pharmacist. He is the custodian of a national treasure. A lesser-known detail of this whole affair is the likely cost and logistics. Arranging for a contingent of royal guards was not a simple matter. It required official orders, a chain of command, and a significant expense. This suggests that Parmentier had powerful allies at court, likely the king himself, who were not just aware of his plan, but were active participants in the charade. King Louis XVI, with his interest in agriculture and his likely amusement at this clever social experiment, may have been Parmentier's silent partner, quietly signing the orders that made the whole illusion possible. It elevates the story from a lone genius's trick to a piece of state-sponsored psychological theater. As you watch the guards pace back and forth, their shadows stretching long in the afternoon sun, you can't help but smile at the sheer, beautiful absurdity of it all. They are guarding dirt. They are protecting a field of humble tubers, with the same seriousness they would afford to the crown jewels. And it is working. The rumors begin to fly, each one more elaborate than the last. People whisper that these are no ordinary potatoes. They are a special, royal variety that imparts strength and vigor. They say that the queen eats them every day. They say that a single tuber is worth a month's wages. None of it is true, of course, but truth is irrelevant. Perception is everything. The days grow shorter, the air taking on a crisp autumnal edge. The potato plants in the field at Les Sableux have reached the peak of their maturity. Their leaves are beginning to yellow, a sign that the real treasure, the crop of tubers, is now fully grown, nestled just beneath the surface of the sandy soil. The illusion of pricelessness, maintained by the stern-faced royal guards, has been a resounding success. The field has become a fixation for the local populace. The potatoes, once scorned, are now the subject of intense desire and speculation. The trap has been meticulously set. Now it is time to spring it. As dusk settles over the fields, a strange and wonderful thing begins to happen. The guards, who have been a constant, intimidating presence from sunrise to sunset, simply leave. One by one, they shoulder their muskets, form up into a neat line, and march away back toward the city. Their departure is as conspicuous as their arrival. They do not leave a replacement contingent. They do not post a notice. They just vanish, leaving the field with its supposedly priceless contents, completely and utterly unguarded for the night. This, of course, was the most brilliant and crucial part of Parmentier's entire scheme. It's a widely accepted historical fact that the guards were ordered to protect the field only during the day and to accept any and all bribes offered to them, turning a blind eye to petty theft. At night, their instructions were even simpler: be absent. Parmentier understood human nature with the precision of a master psychologist. He knew that the desire he had cultivated would be irresistible. He wasn't just allowing the potatoes to be stolen. He was actively, albeit silently, inviting the public to do so. Your perspective lingers in the twilight, a silent witness to this nightly invitation. The last of the sun's glow fades from the horizon, and the field is cloaked in the soft, forgiving darkness of a moonless night. At first, there is nothing but the sound of crickets and the rustle of the wind through the dry potato leaves. The field seems to hold its breath. Then, you see them. Shapes detaching themselves from the darker shadows of the trees at the edge of the field. A figure, hunched low, scurries out into the open. It's a man, perhaps a local farmer or a laborer from a nearby village. He carries a small sack. He moves quickly, furtively, his head on a swivel, constantly checking for the guards who are no longer there. He reaches the first row of plants, drops to his knees, and begins to dig frantically in the soft, sandy soil with his bare hands. A moment later, he pulls a potato from the earth. He holds it for a second, a look of triumph on his face. It is not just a potato. It is stolen treasure. It is a prize. He shoves it in his sack and quickly digs for another asterisk. Soon, he is not alone. A woman, her skirts hitched up, follows him into the field. Then a pair of young boys, their movements filled with the thrill of youthful mischief. Before long, the field is dotted with dozens of these thieves. They are not a mob. They are a collection of individuals and small family groups, all united by a common purpose. They work in a strange, hushed silence, the only sounds being the scrape of hands in the dirt and the occasional whispered exclamation of success. Asterisk. This is the genius of the plan at its most intimate level. Parmentier wasn't just giving away potatoes. He was giving people a story. The man who digs up a sack of potatoes under the cover of darkness will not go home and say, "I was given a handout." He will go home and say, "I outsmarted the king's guards. I liberated the king's potatoes. I have secured a rare and valuable treasure for our family." He has a sense of ownership, of agency. The potatoes taste better because they are forbidden fruit, acquired through daring and cunning. A lesser-known detail that makes this even more poignant is the context of 18th century French law. The theft of food was a serious crime, often punished harshly. These people were taking a genuine risk, or at least they believed they were, which made the reward feel all the more significant. Asterisk. You drift from one group to another. You see a mother showing her son how to find the largest tubers by feeling at the base of the plant. You see a couple working together, one digging, the other stuffing the potatoes into a large apron. There is a palpable sense of excitement, of shared conspiracy. They are not just harvesting a crop. They are participating in a quiet, delicious act of rebellion. They are stealing from the rich to feed their families, a narrative that would soon take on a much larger and more serious meaning in France. Asterisk. Historians still debate whether Parmentier ever came out at night to watch this silent, successful harvest. It's a romantic image. The pharmacist standing in the shadows at the edge of his field, a contented smile on his face as he watches the people of France fall in love with his misunderstood vegetable. One stolen potato at a time. Whether he witnessed it or not, the result was the same. The potatoes began to spread, moving from these nocturnal raids into the kitchens and gardens of the common people. Asterisk. As the first hints of dawn begin to lighten the eastern sky, the thieves melt back into the shadows, their sacks and aprons heavy with their bounty. The field, when the sun rises, will look slightly disheveled, pockmarked with the evidence of the night's activity, and when the guards solemnly march back to their posts to begin their pointless daylight watch, they will be guarding a field that is, day by day, becoming emptier. The ruse was working perfectly. The potato was no longer Parmentier's crop. It was now, in every sense of the word, the people's. Asterisk. The quiet. Nightly raids on the field at Les Sablons have successfully seeded the potato into the community. But Parmentier's campaign is far from over. He has conquered the court's fashion sense and the commoner's curiosity. Now, he must conquer the most formidable bastion of French culture, the palate. It's one thing to steal a strange tuber out of a sense of rebellious glee. It's another thing entirely to know what to do with it. The potato needed to prove it wasn't just a novelty, but that it was genuinely delicious. To achieve this, Parmentier planned his final masterstroke of publicity, a grand dinner party where the potato would be the secret. Silent guest of honor. Asterisk. Your perspective shifts from the dark, open fields to the warm, candlelit interior of a sophisticated Parisian townhouse. This is Parmentier's residence, and tonight it has been transformed. The air is filled with the murmur of polite conversation, the clinking of wine glasses, and the delicate strains of a string quartet playing in the corner. The guest list is a carefully curated collection of the most influential figures in Paris. Celebrated scientists like Benjamin Franklin and Antoine Lavoisier, prominent aristocrats, renowned writers, and noted socialites. These are the trendsetters, the original influencers. If Parmentier could win them over, their approval would ripple through the upper echelons of society. Asterisk, you are a silent guest at this legendary banquet. You drift through the drawing room, observing the scene. The men are in powdered wigs and embroidered silk coats. The women in elegant gowns, their necks glittering with jewels. The candlelight dances on polished silverware and fine porcelain. The atmosphere is one of refined elegance and intellectual curiosity. They have all come because they are intrigued by their host, the pharmacist turned botanist who has become the talk of the town. They have heard of his fashionable flowers and his famously guarded field. Now they are here to see what he does next. They do not know they are the subjects of his next great experiment. The guests are invited to take their seats in the dining room. The table is a work of art, laden with a dazzling array of dishes. It is a feast designed to impress, a culinary tour de force. There are roasted birds, gleaming glazed hams, elaborate pates, and delicate aspics. There are colorful vegetable dishes, glistening sauces, and towering constructions of bread. It is a symphony of 18th century haute cuisine, and hidden within this symphony, playing in almost every section, is the humble potato. Asterisk, this is the central conceit of the evening, a widely accepted historical fact that cemented Parmentier's reputation as a showman. Every single dish served at the banquet, from the appetizer to the dessert, was made with potatoes. But it was done with such skill and subtlety that the star ingredient was rendered completely unrecognizable. The guests were eating potatoes, but they had absolutely no idea. Asterisk, you watch as the first course is served. Perhaps it is a thick, creamy soup. The guests murmur their approval. Delicious. So velvety, one duchess might comment to her neighbor. What do you suppose is the base? They are, of course, eating a potato leek soup, a classic you would recognize instantly, but to them, it is a novel, exquisite creation. Asterisk, the meal progresses, a parade of delicious disguises. A savory pie arrives, its flaky crust giving way to a rich filling, a filling thickened not with flour, but with mashed potatoes. A dish of what appears to be delicate fish cakes is served, but the fish is bound together with creamy, seasoned potato. The bread on the table, a lesser-known but brilliant detail of Parmentier's culinary arsenal, was a special loaf he had developed, made not entirely from wheat flour, but from a blend of flour and potato starch. It was lighter, fluffier, and stayed fresh longer than traditional bread. The guests praise its delightful texture, oblivious to its secret ingredient. Asterisk. The morning after Parmentier's legendary dinner party, the story of his delicious deception spreads through the salons and social circles of Paris like wildfire. You can imagine the scene, in a lavishly decorated drawing room, sunlight streaming through tall windows. A group of aristocrats and intellectuals are gathered. The air is thick with the scent of perfume and fresh coffee. They are not discussing politics or philosophy, but the culinary coup of the previous evening. The potato has become the city's most delicious piece of gossip. Asterisk, your perspective becomes that of a disembodied ear, drifting from one conversation to another in a gilded salon. A marquis, known for his discerning palate, is holding court. I tell you, I was utterly convinced it was a Bechamel of the finest quality, he declares, gesturing with a delicate porcelain cup. But no, it was the humble tuber. The man is a sorcerer, a culinary magician. His audience, a mix of men and women in silks and powdered wigs, listens with rapt attention, a mixture of amusement and genuine astonishment on their faces. Asterisk, a young woman, a socialite whose opinion carries significant weight, chimes in. And did you see the blossom Madame de Polignac was wearing? So simple, so rustic. Far more chic than those overwrought roses, don't you think? The conversation seamlessly melds the two aspects of Parmentier's campaign, the potato as a fashion statement and the potato as a culinary delight. He has created a multifaceted cultural moment. To be in the know, you now had to have an opinion on the potato. To be truly fashionable, you had to have tasted it, or at the very least, you had to pretend you had. Asterisk, this buzz is a widely accepted historical fact. Parmentier's dinner was not just a meal. It was a masterclass in viral marketing, 18th century style. He hadn't just changed a few minds. He had changed the conversation. The potato was no longer a symbol of poverty or pestilence. It was now associated with wit, innovation, and a certain playful sophistication. It was the food of the enlightened, the forward-thinking. To reject the potato now was to mark yourself as old-fashioned, superstitious, and hopelessly out of touch. Asterisk, you drift over to another group, where a more serious discussion is taking place. Here, a well-known philosopher, a man of the Enlightenment, is speaking. It's not merely the taste, he says, leaning forward earnestly. It's the principle. Parmentier has shown us that our prejudices are often built on nothing more than ignorance and folklore. If we can be so wrong about a simple vegetable, on what other, more important matters, might we also be mistaken? The potato has been elevated from a menu item to a metaphor for progress, a symbol of reason triumphing over superstition. Asterisk, this intellectual embrace was a crucial part of its success. Parmentier had successfully linked the potato to the dominant philosophical movement of the era. The Enlightenment was all about questioning traditional authority, challenging old superstitions, and embracing scientific inquiry. The potato became the perfect mascot for this movement. Eating it wasn't just a culinary choice. It was a small act of intellectual rebellion. Asterisk, a lesser-known detail of this societal shift is how it began to trickle down into the professional classes. Chefs in the grand houses of the aristocracy, hearing their employers praise Parmentier's meal, began to experiment. They were under pressure to be innovative, to serve the latest trends. So, they started to tentatively incorporate the potato into their menus. At first, it might have been in disguise, just as Parmentier had done. But gradually, as its acceptance grew, it began to appear on its own merits. Cookbooks from the period began to include potato recipes, a tangible sign of its entry into the culinary canon. Asterisk, historians still debate how quickly this acceptance spread beyond the elite circles of Paris. Was the change in opinion in a gilded salon truly reflective of the feelings of a baker in a provincial town, or a farmer in the south of France? The answer is likely no, not immediately. The deep-seated traditional fears of the general populace would take much longer to overcome. The gossip of the aristocracy was a powerful engine of change, but it was not an express train. There was still a significant gap between the fashionable trendsetters of Paris and the deeply conservative rural population. Asterisk, but the tide had undeniably turned. The whispers in the salons were the first gusts of a wind that would eventually sweep across the entire country. You can feel the momentum building. What started with a flower in the Queen's hair, and was reinforced by guards around a field, was now being cemented in the most influential rooms in the nation. The elite had given their stamp of approval. They had tasted the proof, and they had declared it good. Asterisk, as the afternoon wears on, the conversation in the salon will eventually move on to other topics: new opera, a political scandal, the latest philosophical treatise. But the work has been done. The potato is no longer a pariah. It has been rehabilitated, rebranded, and welcomed into the exclusive club of acceptable French foods. Parmentier's gentle, patient, and incredibly clever campaign had reached its social peak. Now, he had to take this newfound prestige and turn it toward his original, more serious goal: ending hunger. Asterisk, the fashionable chatter in the Parisian salons was a magnificent victory. But for Parmentier, it was only a means to an end. His ultimate goal had never been to simply make the potato a trendy dish for the aristocracy. His mission, born from his own experience as a prisoner of war, was far grander and more urgent: to make the potato a source of security for the entire nation. France, for all its cultural splendor and military might, lived under the constant, looming shadow of famine. The transition from novelty to necessity was the most crucial phase of his crusade. Your perspective widens now, pulling back from the glittering confines of Paris to look at the broader landscape of late 18th century France. You see a country of immense contrasts. The opulence of the court at Versailles exists in the same world as desperate rural poverty, and the single greatest threat to social stability was the fragility of the food supply. The nation's diet was perilously dependent on a single crop: wheat. This over-reliance is a widely accepted historical fact. When the wheat harvest was good, there was bread, and there was relative peace. But when the harvest failed due to drought, or excessive rain, or a harsh winter, the consequences were catastrophic. You drift over a small, provincial village. The fields that should be golden with ripe wheat are instead patchy and brown. The harvest has been poor. In the village square, you see a long line of anxious faces outside the bakery, where the price of a loaf of bread has doubled in a week. You can feel the tension in the air, a low-grade, pervasive anxiety that tightens its grip on every household. This was the reality that Parmentier was fighting against. This was the problem he believed the potato was uniquely qualified to solve. He began to shift the focus of his campaign from charm to science, from fashion to function. He knew that the potato's greatest strengths were agricultural. It was far hardier than wheat. It could grow in poorer soils. He had spectacularly proven at Les Sables. It was less susceptible to the droughts and floods that could wipe out a grain crop. And, most importantly, a single acre planted with potatoes could produce 2 to 3 times the calories of an acre planted with wheat. It was, from a purely logistical standpoint, a miracle crop. Parmentier started to advocate for the potato not just as a food, but as a national security asset. He saw it as a buffer, a backstop against the inevitable failures of the grain harvest. He envisioned a France where, when the price of bread skyrocketed, there was another, cheaper, and equally nutritious option available to the people. It was a food that could literally save lives and prevent the bread riots that so often spiraled into wider social unrest. But critical detail of his argument was his focus on the potato as a food for institutions. He lobbied tirelessly to have potatoes introduced into the diets of hospitals, poorhouses, and, most importantly, the military. He understood that these large institutions could create a stable, large-scale demand for the crop, which would in turn encourage more farmers to grow it. His own experience as an army pharmacist gave him credibility. He could speak with authority about the health of soldiers, arguing that a diet supplemented with potatoes would make the French army stronger and more resilient, less susceptible to the scurvy and malnutrition that plagued all armies of the period. You can picture him in a government minister's office, a man of science amidst the political maneuvering. He isn't serving potato soup. He's presenting charts and figures. He's showing yield comparisons, nutritional data, and projections of how many lives could be saved during the next famine. He's speaking their language, the language of logistics, economics, and state power. Historians still debate how much immediate success these more serious efforts had. The French bureaucracy was famously slow and resistant to change. While many officials were impressed by his arguments, implementing a nationwide agricultural shift was a monumental task. The farmers themselves were a major hurdle. They were a deeply traditional and conservative group. They knew how to grow wheat. While Parmentier continued his high-level lobbying, trying to turn the gears of government and agricultural policy, He simultaneously opened up a new front in his campaign, one aimed directly at the minds of the literate public. He knew that the gossip of the salons and the decrees of ministers could only go so far. To achieve true, lasting change, he needed to win the battle for public opinion, not just among the elite, but among the growing middle class of merchants, artisans, and provincial landowners. His weapon of choice was not a bouquet of flowers or a clever dinner menu, but something far more modest and enduring, the printed word. Asterisk, you find yourself back in his quiet, orderly study in Paris. The fire is burning low, and the late-night silence is broken only by the soft scratching of a quill pen on paper. This is Parmentier in his most natural element. The scholar, the scientist, the educator. He is not writing a grand philosophical treatise, but a series of clear, practical, and gently persuasive pamphlets and articles. This sustained effort of writing and publishing is a widely accepted historical fact, and it formed the intellectual backbone of his entire movement. Asterisk, you peer over his shoulder at the manuscript he is working on. The prose is not flamboyant or dramatic. It is calm, rational, and reassuring. He is systematically dismantling every myth and prejudice that still clung to the potato. He addresses the fear of leprosy head-on, citing his own experience and the health of entire nations in Germany and Ireland who consumed the tuber daily. He explains the potato's botanical family, the nightshades, putting the relationship in its proper scientific context and carefully distinguishing the edible tuber from its toxic cousins. He is fighting fear with facts, superstition with science. Asterisk, his most famous work from this period was a prize-winning essay for the Academy of Besançon, the very same city that had once banned the potato. The essay's title was a masterpiece of scientific persuasion, inquiry into nutritious vegetables that in times of scarcity may be substituted for ordinary food. It doesn't sound like a bestseller, and it wasn't, but it was hugely influential. In it, he laid out the complete case for the potato, covering its history, its nutritional properties, its agricultural advantages, and, crucially, how to cook it. Asterisk, this practical element was a lesser-known, but brilliant aspect of his written campaign. He understood that it wasn't enough to tell people the potato was good for them. You had to show them that it was easy and delicious to prepare. His pamphlets were filled with recipes. You can imagine a housewife in Lyon or a baker in Marseille, having heard the strange rumors about the king's potatoes, coming across one of Parmentier's pamphlets. Her curiosity piqued. She might read a recipe for a simple potato soup or for potato bread. It seemed straightforward, unintimidating. Perhaps she decides to try it. Asterisk, Parmentier's recipes were designed to be accessible. He wasn't writing for the chefs of the aristocracy anymore. He was writing for the common kitchen. He gave instructions on how to boil, mash, and roast potatoes. He explained how to make them into simple, hearty stews with common ingredients like onions and herbs. He even, as mentioned before, perfected the art of making potato bread, providing detailed instructions on how to dry and grind the potatoes into a fine flour or starch that could be mixed with wheat flour to extend a family's precious supply. This was not just a cookbook. It was a manual for survival. Asterisk, he didn't just write, he distributed. He used his growing network of contacts in scientific societies and government to ensure his pamphlets were printed and circulated widely. He sent copies to provincial governors, to doctors in rural towns, to the heads of local agricultural societies. He was, in essence, creating and distributing the instruction manual for a new French diet. He was methodically, patiently, teaching the nation how to eat. Asterisk, historians still debate the literacy rates of 18th century France and how many people would have been able to read his pamphlets directly. But the influence of the printed word often extends far beyond its immediate readership. A local priest or doctor who read Parmentier's work could then spread the information to their entire community through sermons or simple conversation. The ideas, legitimized by the authority of a printed scientific paper, would trickle down and disseminate through the population, reinforcing the positive rumors that had already started. Asterisk as Parmentier blots the ink on a finished page. You can feel the quiet power of his work. Each pamphlet is a small, silent ambassador for his cause, traveling across the country, entering homes and minds, and slowly, gently, replacing a century of fear with practical, reassuring knowledge. The excitement of the court and the drama of the guarded field were the flashy, attention-grabbing headlines. But this quiet, scholarly work, this patient campaign of gentle persuasion, was what would ultimately lay the deep and lasting foundation for the potato's acceptance into the heart of French life. Asterisk years begin to pass, not as a rush of dramatic events, but as a slow, steady current of change. The seeds planted by Parmentier, both literal and metaphorical, are taking root across France. The process is not a revolution, but a quiet evolution, happening one village, one farm, one kitchen at a time. The cumulative effect of his multi-pronged campaign is now becoming visible, not in the grand pronouncements of the court, but in the subtle, everyday textures of French life. Asterisk your perspective returns to the streets of Paris, the city where our story began. But it is a slightly different city now. You find yourself once again in a bustling marketplace, but the scene has changed. Alongside the familiar baskets of turnips, onions, and cabbages, there is something new. A farmer, his face weathered by the sun, stands proudly behind a large wooden cart piled high with potatoes. They are no longer the rejected, suspicious lumps you saw years before. They are clean, sorted by size, and displayed with care. Asterisk you watch, as a woman, perhaps the same one who once recoiled from the strange tuber, now approaches the cart with a confident air. She inspects the potatoes, picking one up and feeling its weight in her palm. She haggles with the farmer not about whether they are safe to eat, but about the price. This simple, mundane transaction is a quiet but profound victory. The potato has arrived. It has made the journey from a feared pariah to a marketable commodity. It has found its place in the rhythm of the city's commerce. This growing presence in the markets is a widely accepted historical fact, a clear indicator of the potato's slow but steady integration into the national diet. Asterisk, the change is not just visible, it's in the air. As you walk through the city, you catch a new scent weaving its way into the familiar tapestry of wood smoke and baking bread. It's the smell of roasting potatoes. You follow the aroma and find its source. A street vendor standing over a makeshift charcoal brazier. He is selling hot, roasted potatoes, wrapped in simple paper cones, to passersby. This is the ultimate sign of acceptance. The potato is no longer a complex dish, requiring a recipe from a pamphlet. It is now a simple, hot, and satisfying street food, accessible to everyone. A laborer on his way home from a long day's work can buy one for a few coins. It is warm, it is filling, it is real. Asterisk, you see a group of children gathered around the vendor, their faces alight with anticipation. He hands one a steaming potato, and the child blows on it to cool it down before taking a hungry bite. There is no fear, no suspicion. For this new generation, the potato is not a strange, foreign invader. It is just food, a normal, comforting part of their world. Asterisk, a lesser-known detail that facilitated this spread was the role of private gardens and monasteries. Long before large-scale commercial farming of potatoes took off, they were often first adopted in smaller, more experimental settings. Monks, with their long tradition of agriculture and self-sufficiency, were often early adopters of new crops. Similarly, the kitchen gardens of the bourgeoisie, and even some skilled artisans, became small laboratories, where the potato could be cultivated and tested on a household scale. This created a decentralized grassroots movement that grew in parallel to Parmentier's more public efforts. Asterisk historians, still wonder about the regional variations in this acceptance. The potato likely took hold more quickly in the north of France, where the climate was more similar to Germany and the Netherlands, and where grain harvests were often less reliable. In the sunny, olive oil-rich south, with its proud and distinct culinary traditions, the resistance was likely stronger and more The potato's conquest of France was not a single, unified invasion, but a series of separate, local campaigns, each with its own pace and its own particular challenges. But the overall trend is undeniable. Parmentier's work has tipped the scales. He has created a positive feedback loop, as more people try the potato and realize it is both safe and delicious. The demand grows. As the demand grows, more farmers are incentivized to plant it. As more farmers plant it, it becomes more widely available and cheaper, which in turn encourages more people to try it. The momentum is now self-sustaining. As the 1780s draw to a close, the quiet culinary and agricultural shifts you've been witnessing are suddenly thrown into sharp relief by the seismic rumblings of history. The background hum of social tension that has been present throughout our story is about to erupt into a full-blown political and social cataclysm. The French Revolution, the story of the potato, which began as a gentle comedy of manners and marketing, now intersects with one of the most dramatic and violent chapters in modern history. Your perspective pulls back from the cozy tavern scene, ascending high above Paris. You can feel the change in the city's atmosphere. The air is no longer just filled with the sense of daily life. It is electric with discontent, charged with the energy of radical ideas and righteous anger. The old certainties are crumbling. The power of the king and the aristocracy, once absolute, is being challenged in the streets, in pamphlets, and in the newly formed National Assembly. And at the heart of this revolutionary fervor is the age-old problem of bread. A series of disastrous harvests in 1788 and 1789, a widely accepted historical fact, led to a severe grain shortage. The price of bread, the staple food for the vast majority of the population, skyrocketed. Bakeries were looted. Riots erupted. The cry for bread became a cry for justice, a rallying call for revolution. The hunger that Parmentier had spent his life fighting had become a direct catalyst for the overthrow of the entire social order. In this moment of profound crisis, the potato's role undergoes its final and most significant transformation. It had been a novelty for the rich and a curiosity for the poor. Now, it became a tool of survival. As the bread supply dwindled and its price became unbearable, the potato, which was still relatively cheap and increasingly available thanks to Parmentier's efforts, was suddenly the only viable alternative for millions of starving people. The slow, patient work of the preceding decades had created a crucial safety net that, while not perfect, helped mitigate the worst of the famine. You can see this transition happening on the ground. The revolutionary government, desperate to feed the rest of population of Paris, takes control of food distribution. They begin to actively promote the potato, not as a choice, but as a patriotic duty. A lesser-known detail of this period is that revolutionary figures like Maximilien Robespierre championed the tuber, publishing pamphlets that echoed Parmentier's earlier work, hailing the potato as the food of revolutionaries, a humble, honest, and democratic crop, free from the aristocratic baggage of fine white bread. The potato, which had begun its journey to acceptance by being associated with the king and queen, now solidified its position by being completely detached from them. The royal couple who had once worn its blossoms as a fashion statement were now prisoners of the revolution. The tuber had successfully switched its allegiance. It was no longer the king's potato. It was the people's potato, the tuber of the revolution. Historians still debate the full extent of the potato's impact during the most radical phase of the revolution. It certainly didn't solve the food crisis entirely, and starvation remained a real and present danger. But it is impossible to ignore its role as a crucial buffer. How many lives were saved by a simple potato stew when a loaf of bread was unattainable? How much more violent might the bread riots have been without this alternative source of calories? The questions are unanswerable. But the potato's presence was a significant factor in the complex equation of survival. Asterisk, you watch as a cart, once laden with a farmer's produce for the open market, is now commandeered by a local revolutionary committee. Its content sacks of potatoes are being distributed to a long, orderly line of citizens, each clutching a ration card. The scene is grim, utilitarian, a far cry from the playful thievery in Parmentier's field. But it is a sign of the potato's ultimate success. It has become an essential part of the national infrastructure, a staple so important that its distribution is a matter of state policy. Asterisk, the irony is profound. The gentle, apolitical pharmacist, who had used the power of the monarchy to launch his campaign, had inadvertently provided the fuel for the very revolution that would destroy that monarchy. His quiet crusade to prevent famine had succeeded in ways he could never have imagined, playing a supporting role in the birth of a new and often terrifying French Republic. The potato's journey from suspicious outsider to revolutionary staple was complete. It had been tried by war, tested by fashion, and was now being forged into a national symbol in the fires of revolution. Asterisk. The fires of the revolution eventually burned themselves out, leaving behind a new France, a new Europe, and a new world. The grand, dramatic narrative of history moves on to Napoleon, to empire, to the dawn of the industrial age. But our story ends where it began, in a quiet field, at the close of a long and eventful life. Your perspective drifts away from the noise and tumult of Paris, seeking out a place of peace, a final gentle scene to close our journey. Asterisk, you find yourself back at Les Sablons. It is no longer a barren, sandy plain. The years have transformed it. Part of it is now cultivated with a variety of crops, a testament to the agricultural innovations that have taken root. But a section of it remains, a quiet, leafy plot that feels like a place of memory. The sun is low in the sky, casting long, soft shadows. The air is cool, and smells of damp earth and late-blooming flowers. Asterisk, an old man is walking slowly through the field. It is Antoine Augustin Parmentier. He is much older now. His hair is white, and he leans on a walking stick. But his eyes still hold the same calm, intelligent light. He has lived through the Ancien Regime, the Terror, and the rise of Napoleon. He has seen his country torn apart and reborn. And through it all, he has remained steadfast in his quiet, lifelong mission. He has been honored by governments of all stripes, from the monarchy to the empire. His work recognized as a service to the nation that transcended politics. This enduring respect is a widely accepted historical fact. He was not a revolutionary or a royalist. He was a pragmatist and a humanitarian, and for that, he was universally admired. Asterisk, he stops and looks out over the land where his great experiment once took place. He can probably remember the day the guards first arrived, the thrill of seeing his plan put into motion. He can probably still picture the dark shapes of the thieves stealing his potatoes in the night, the moment his campaign turned from a public spectacle into a grassroots movement. Asterisk, he bends down, with some effort, and his fingers brush against the leaves of a potato plant. It is a simple, unassuming plant, just like the ones that saved his life in a Prussian prison camp all those decades ago. It is still, to him, a miracle, a symbol of resilience, of hope, of the power of a simple, good idea. Asterisk, a lesser-known detail of his later life is that his work extended far beyond the potato. He became a towering figure in public health and nutrition. He was instrumental in creating the first smallpox vaccination campaign in France. He pioneered new techniques for food preservation, like refrigeration. He improved the quality of bread for the entire city of Paris by reforming the baking profession. The potato was his most famous victory, but it was just one part of a long and brilliant career dedicated to the simple, noble cause of helping people live healthier, better lives. Asterisk as you watch him standing there, a figure of quiet dignity in the fading light. You reflect on the journey you've witnessed, a journey that began with a single, deeply held prejudice and ended with the complete transformation of a nation's diet. A story driven not by grand battles or political intrigue, but by cleverness, patience, and a profound understanding of human nature. It was a revolution accomplished, not with a guillotine, but with a bouquet of flowers, a dinner party, and a gentle pamphlet. Asterisk historians still debate the great man theory of history. Was Parmentier truly the single-handed savior of the potato? Or was its adoption an inevitable agricultural and economic shift that he simply helped to accelerate? The truth, as always, is likely somewhere in the middle. He was the right man, with the right idea, in the right place, at the right time. He was a catalyst, a champion, a masterful publicist for a cause that was waiting for its moment. He didn't just introduce a vegetable, he gave it a story. And it is the story that people remember. Asterisk the sun dips below the horizon, and the field is bathed in a soft, purple twilight. Parmentier turns and begins his slow walk home. His work is done. His legacy is not written in stone monuments or grand portraits, but is planted in the soil of his nation. It is a living legacy, one that would continue to feed and sustain the people of France long after he was gone. You watch him until he is just a small silhouette against the darkening sky, a quiet pharmacist who taught a nation to love a suspicious vegetable, leaving a gentle, indelible mark on the history of the world. Asterisk, asterisk, and so, our journey into the past comes to a soft and quiet close. The story of the suspicious potato and its patient champion is complete. Let the images of that time gently fade from your mind. The flickering lanterns on the cobblestone streets of old Paris, the delicate, star-shaped blossoms in a queen's hair, the silent, moonlit field where a treasure was freely given to those who thought they were stealing it. Let these gentle scenes drift away, leaving behind only a sense of calm and quiet contentment.